The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, May 5th, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Cal Cates. Cal is an award-winning writer, published researcher, international speaker, and the founder and executive director of Healwell, a nonprofit whose mission is to improve quality of life for people affected by acute, chronic, and serious illness. They have trained thousands of healthcare providers in skills of resiliency, self-awareness, communication, and forgiveness. They have dedicated their career to advocacy in healthcare, massage therapy as social justice, and to revolutionizing education for healthcare providers. Cal has trained with Roshi Joan Halifax, Ram Das, Frank Osticeski, and other leaders in the field of contemplative care, and has created curriculum and written for trade journals on topics ranging from end-of-life care to interdisciplinary education to racism and the endless ways that humans make it hard to live in successful, equitable harmony. Welcome, Cal.
Hello, it's a treat to be here with you.
I am just delighted and thrilled. This is such an honor to have you join us. I am just so inspired every day with everything that you and Healwell does. I think it's gold, and I think it's very important. So this is really a treat to me.
Thank you. I am so glad that our paths crossed because I feel like it's very easy to have a sense that you're alone out here doing the work that we do. Even when you work, I work at Healwell with many other people, and there's still that sense of isolation. So when we met, I feel like there was this kindred sort of, oh, you care about things too.
Yes, definitely. I think that spirit of kindred spirits is something that we really try to foster here. And, it's one of our primary hopes is to really foster community through the Society of Massage Archives. And I'm sure this conversation will just drive that home even more.
I hope so.
Well, Cal, we like to start here on the Hands of History, talking about our guests' background, what got them into massage. Take me back to it. How did your initial journey in massage therapy begin?
It's not a very good story. I had never had a massage before I decided to go to massage school. In fact, the first massage I ever had was, I applied and they said, so you've never had a massage before. You should go get a massage, before we go any further. And so I did do that. And they had like a little thing where you go receive a massage and then you write kind of like a little, this is what happened. And I have some guesses about sort of how I wound up there. I knew a couple people who were massage therapists, and uh, I found myself in massage school, and I was like, oh, well, this might be why I'm on the planet. Okay, like the first day we did, I think the first couple of at my school they called them logs, where you do a session and you write about it. And I think that at least the very first one, if not the first couple, were this crazy thing called still touch. And I was like, this is amazing. I just get to sit quietly and be nice to this person. And I'm like, people get paid for this? This is what? So I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do actually with massage therapy. I think some people probably go into school with a very clear sense of, I'm going to do this so I can do this. And it just seemed like the next step for me. And you'll note I didn't say the next logical step. Uh, that's not really been a guiding force in my journey. Logic, it's really in so many ways. I just sort of have felt this feels like the next thing. And halfway through my massage school, I feel like I just had a great opportunity a couple of weeks ago to talk with Till Lukow and Whitney Lowe on their podcast. And so I told this story. So I'm like, people know this story, but maybe some people don't know the story. So about halfway through massage school, I went to see my grandfather at what I now know is a skilled nursing facility. He was dying, I don't know that anybody in my family knew that, or if they did, they didn't tell me. And while I was there with him massaging his hand, he died. Like I watched him take his last breath. And it wasn't like I didn't grow up in a family that normalized these kinds of things, or, I had no contemplative practice at the time. I had no experience with death really. And it seemed like a very normal thing, meaning that I wasn't sort of horrified. And I think I sort of gradually started thinking it was not like this crazy epiphanic moment where I was like, this is what I'll do with massage. Uh, but I found my way to Gail McDonald's oncology massage class, and I took Reiki training, and then I found Tracy Walton, another sort of leader in oncology massage, and I just sort of flowed from there. But I really had no idea what I would do with massage therapy when I started massage school.
First of all, I just want to open this space and say some parts of your story I can totally reflect to. I'd never had a massage before I went to school. No one gave me a hard time about it. They didn't insist that I go and get a massage before I started school. I attended one of those mini chains of
Mm-hmm.
schools, so I think they were just happy to have someone signed up, uh,
Possible.
and I was happy to be signed up. So
Yes.
And then you tell this touching story, and I love that your story of beginning also includes end to it, death. Uh,
Yeah.
and I love how that's kind of been a part of your career, that you don't shy away from, and that you really make a concerted effort to stay engaged with and work through. I also, my grandfather was in a VA nursing home, and
Hmm.
I I was in the middle of my training, coming towards the end of it actually, and I came in. He was in a wheelchair. I gave him a massage. I was on a break. I'm wondering, Cal, that brings me to a question. Did you come from a family of care providers, caretakers?
Hmm. It's a good question. Yes and no, I guess I would say. I have an uncle and an aunt who my aunt became a doctor later in her life. And my uncle was always a physician. My grandma was a nurse. That's kind of, I feel like, and now, of course, I have cousins who are nurses and physicians and things, but we definitely had some caregiving, I guess I would say. And I don't know. I feel like the underlying question of that is sort of were you influenced by that? And I don't know that I was because I don't remember it sort of being part of our sort of family ethos, caregiving necessarily. So yeah, I'll have to think about that a bit more. But yeah, professional careers in caregiving were not unheard of in my family. And I think, you have some people who just have these long legacies of healthcare providers, and I don't know that I'd say we had that exactly.
All right. Let me ask you then, what career path were you on before massage therapy came into the foreground?
Well, it's interesting because I have a degree in English literature, and I wasn't sure what I would do with that. It just I liked writing and I liked reading, and I was like, well, if I'm going to go to college, this seems like a broad thing, right, that I could learn that probably would be useful. And at some point I thought I might go to law school, and as that time approached, even then it sort of became I became aware that practicing the law was sort of about it was about cleverness and intelligence and not always about justice. And I think that I sort of at that time in my life I felt like I don't know that that's where I want to go with my career. And so I came to Washington, D.C., and a friend from, I played soccer in college, and one of my teammates said, my sister lives in Arlington, Virginia, and she's got a room in her attic. And if you want to like stay with her and her husband for a while, she works in PR and she can set you up with some interviews. And so the first week that I got here, I interviewed with a public relations firm and they hired me. And I wound up doing automotive public relations. I was working on the Ford Motor Company account, and it was in the middle of the Jeep rollover crisis, and I was writing press releases about how SUVs aren't that bad for the environment, and the rollover thing is overblown, and I was like, wow, this is terrible. I can't believe this is my job. But one of the things Ford was doing at the time was that the booster seat law had just gone into effect. And Ford Motor Company teamed up with United Way to give away 1 million booster seats to underserved low-income families. There was a nonprofit that came in to partner on this distribution event thing, and they hired me away from the PR firm. And so for the next like 2.5 years, I was part of this program called Boost America, where I literally drove a red minivan around that had Boost America painted on the side of it. And I would work with the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the local United Ways, and we would coordinate these events where families would drive through. I became a certified child passenger safety technician. But then one day, after I had been working there for a bit, we all lost our jobs because the person who ran the company had been stealing from the program and was going to jail. And so we got on the Friday call and she was like, "Hey, so this is your last day, everybody." And because this is such a like an unexpected thing, we didn't really have time to work out like Cobra or any of that stuff for you. So the paycheck you got today is your last one, and you can leave your keys to your minivan and your computer and all those things on your desk. So I walked down K Street here in Washington, D.C., and I got a job as a bartender. So I was bartending when I went to massage school. I had done that in college. I just sort of, hung out bartending for a couple of years after I lost that job. And that's how I wandered into the world of massage therapy, which, there are a lot of parallels between being a massage therapist and being a bartender.
I can't resist. Could you go into a little bit more elaboration on that, Cal?
Well, so people come to bars because they're in pain, right? I mean, on some level, that no one would tell you that's why they're going to the bar, right? But they want to feel a little bit less or feel a little bit differently, right? And so, same is true of coming to a massage therapist. And as you relax, you start to say the things, right? And so you just start telling your bartender or your massage therapist what ails you. And, even as a bartender, my job was not to give advice or tell people how to live their lives. It was just to witness, and certainly to pay attention to maybe you've had enough medicine for tonight. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I feel like there are places where people seek connection, and that as the purveyor of that connection, your job is really to just take in the experience of humans who are not completely aware that they're trying to have a need met. But if you can bring an awareness that, you don't have to tell me this is why you're here. We're both humans traveling on this crazy journey, and let's just spend this next hour or two, three, whatever, together. And hopefully our time together will have been a balm for both of us.
I'm sorry, I just have to sit a moment and repeat what you said. Purveyor of connection. Oh God, doesn't that just sit on the heart?
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy that that's a job.
I love it. Let me ask you then, Cal, does your background working there for the Ford company, do you see any of that translating to massage therapy now?
I mean, I think that I learned a lot in public relations. Some of it, I don't even want to say good or bad, but it's really useful to think about what it takes to make a message stick, or sort of what repels people, what inspires people to action. So, not specifically necessarily in the work I did with Ford, but seeing all the different accounts and the different ways that we would package the messages. Because I worked on a program for seatbelt safety with the NFL, and we had like NFL quarterbacks and tight ends and stuff do these big, like, side of the bus, billboards about the importance of wearing your seatbelt. And it wasn't enough that this quarterback was telling you to wear your seatbelt. Like, we had to think about how does this image work with these words, and sort of where is this going to be shared, and how do we get you're always competing for people's attention in this, I mean, increasingly stimulus focused world. So I think, I don't know that I would say I cracked the code in my time in public relations, but I don't think I've been able to see a billboard or an advertisement, or, you know, even the things that show up in your mailbox since working in the PR firm, without thinking about like a room of many people sat around for hours, maybe multiple meetings over months or whatever, to figure out how this was going to look and what words were going to go into this. And um, it's just incredible to me that that how much time is spent trying to get humans to do and say and think the way we want them to.
It's incredible. Yeah. And I know part of that is also something that Healwell is focused on also is, In what ways can we re-examine that and kind of call it into question at times?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that one of our biggest messaging challenges at Healwell is that I think it's not inaccurate to say that most massage therapists don't see themselves as people who want to work with sick people. And I think that, Healwell started very focused on oncology massage, and then we've branched out to palliative care, which includes just people with serious illness and their caregivers, whether it be spouses or adult children or whomever in that sort of ecosystem of care. And I feel like there are massage therapists who went to massage school to do that work. And that people who think they're working with healthy people, and I say that very specifically because if you think you're working with healthy people, you're lying to yourself. Everyone is walking around with something that is either on its way to becoming serious or, just could use a little more perspective and kind of a different approach from a massage therapist, and helping massage therapists see that even if you think you never want to set foot in a hospital, you don't want to work with people with serious illness, the messages and the courses that we create are about how to human more expertly or sort of more graciously, I guess I would say, and that it doesn't matter who you're touching. Those are skills that benefit any massage therapist. But how to say that without being like, yeah, yeah, I know you don't think we're for you, but for real, we're for you and you're for us. Let's do this.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know that's got to be hard to craft a message like that, especially one that sells. As a franchise employee, I got the message. So it's
Oh, it's good. That's excellent. Well, and I feel like that really is, no, we're headed into, we've been doing this for 16 years now. And honestly, the best messages come from people who sort of find themselves in our classes, whether it's online or in person, kind of by accident. And they go, "Oh, I I never would have thought this would insert thing that it did for them." And so when you have individual therapists who say, yeah, yeah, like I work with athletes or I work with whomever, but I went to this Healwell class and it, opened my mind or changed how I think about a thing. And then other therapists are like, oh, like I'm kind of tired of going to the same old classes. And so if this worked for this person, then maybe I'll try it too.
I also want to touch on you. You said if you think you're working with just healthy people, you're kidding yourself. What is it? There was one episode of the Healwell podcast, something that really struck me. You're just temporarily able-bodied, or something like that, Cal. Do you have it exactly?
Yeah, I think that's actually what it is. We had I can't remember. We've had a variety of guests when our show was more guest centric, who came from the disability community and really reframed things in that really important way. Like we are all, everything we do in advocacy for people who are ill, disabled, whatever it might be, you're just paving the way for yourself because that is where we're headed. And I think that's massage therapists broadly, and obviously none of you, we're not a monolith, right? But when we see so much pushback when we share that kind of message in our classes, and therapists are like, well, that's not true. If I sleep and I eat right and I whatever, and I'm like, no, like do those things. They will change the way that you are living your life in this moment, but don't eat well and exercise and sleep and whatever because you think it means you won't get sick, die, whatever. And so, I think there's such a pushback among massage therapists and sort of quote the giant air bunnies wellness industry. The idea that from a Buddhist perspective, we are made to get old, to die, to become sick, and that these aren't failures. These are the natural progression of being in this human form. So yeah, I think we're all temporarily able-bodied. We're all temporarily, quote, well, and that people on our tables don't see us necessarily as healthcare providers. You have people all the time. I remember this one time I worked with a woman who had an ostomy, a colostomy, actually, and she didn't put it on her form. And so I'm tucking the drape around like her hip where the ostomy is kind of attached, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And she's like, oh, I have a colostomy, and I was like, oh, I mean, I'm not gonna like stop the massage, but she's like, oh, I didn't think it mattered. This is just massage, and I'm like, I had a woman who had a prosthetic leg. Also, I went to like undrape the leg, and there was not a leg there, and she's like, oh, I didn't think it mattered, and I'm like, I mean, I didn't then have to redo the whole massage, right? But it was like, why wouldn't you? I'm about to touch your body. Why would you not think I need to know these things? But I think people really are very, even people who love massage and say that they're like zealots, they don't think of us as people who need to know these very important medical facts about them, and we have people with diabetes and people with high blood pressure and people with these conditions that have become so manageable that they don't think to mention, I'm taking insulin, I'm taking beta blockers, I'm taking whatever it might be. And honestly, I think most massage therapists wouldn't know what to do with that information. And that's, I mean, obviously something like how many soapboxes can we stack up here? But it's something we need to fix as a profession. So,
Let's go ahead and stack the soapboxes. If not, they're going to tumble on top and
it's true. It's true.
gosh, I could go down so many rabbit holes with you, Cal.
Same.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions, the way clients answer it, I ask them what's new, what's different, and they tell me nothing. It's all the same. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I am personally a totally different person than I was when I woke up this morning.
Yes.
Your body is constantly changing. How can you tell me nothing's new and nothing's different? Everything
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think that that is informed by this idea that nothing has happened that you, my massage therapist, need to know about. And also, our culture is so dedicated to at least holding up the facade that nothing has changed. And we're so resistant to the reality of constant change that I think people, they don't even think they're lying to you or leaving things out. They're like, nope, everything's great. Moving on. And it's like, oh, okay. I hope that's true. I'm having a really hard time believing it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. The other answer that I always get, why are you here? And they want to tell me to relax. Now, that's a totally perfect and justifiable answer, but tell me more. What's keeping you from that in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, what would relaxation look like for you? And sort of, I mean, there's such like an and there's such an agenda to that, right? Like, I'm here to be a different person, right? Because you walk around not being, quote, relaxed, but I'm here to have this stranger in an hour transform decades of behavioral, whatever. So yeah, it is kind of it's sort of it's a setup, our job.
Right, and no pressure whatsoever for you
No, cool.
to.
Yes.
All right, Cal. I think let's circle back to, have you always been in the DC, Virginia area, or at least for the massage portion of your career?
For the massage portion, I moved to this area temporarily 25 years ago. So I have lived here the longest of anywhere I've lived in my life.
Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a quarter of a century, friend.
Yeah. It's a while.
And what time was when you started entry level massage training?
So I graduated in early in 2005.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So, post 9/11,
Hmm.
the second Bush administration, and kind of not really, but right on the edge of the start of that recession in the
Hmm.
2008, right?
Yeah.
Can you describe kind of what that moment in time looked like, and if you can think back and if you can identify on your feet like this, anything
Yeah.
that might have influenced your massage training with all the things going on at the time?
Yeah, well, I remember the I guess it must have been either Tuesday or Wednesday night that I had one of the classes that I would have each week in massage school. And I remember when George W. Bush was elected and coming to school and having, my colleagues in massage school, we were all just like sort of crestfallen. At least the people that I spent the most time with. And I remember our instructor like having to say like, "Listen, I hear you." And, obviously not everybody in this room feels the same. And also, we're here to do a thing. And so we're here to take care of each other. We're here to, like be with what's real. And like, this is noise. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how they approached it, but I, I don't know that I feel like my massage training experience was so rich and transformative that it's hard to even know how much of that was about what was going on in the world broadly versus sort of how the program was designed and what we were all kind of going through personally. And I think for me, having also sort of like having come out not recently, but sort of still figuring out like what it meant to be a gay person and then also kind of wondering about gender and things like massage school was sort of perfectly timed in terms of transformation is the order of the day, right? And that actually it's one of the main things we're here to do as humans and that it created an environment where that was a thing I could do and felt supported in doing.
Yeah, I also like that you say about transformation being on the menu, the order of
Hmm.
the day. And then but that goes back, it brushes right up against our resistance to change.
Yeah.
Was there resistance to the transformative experience of massage for you when you were in training?
I don't think so. And I feel like I'm quick to say that being gay and trans was like having the best sort of Cliff's Notes ever in a way, because I I I didn't feel able to phone it in as a person. As soon as I started to become aware of these things about me that made it so that I didn't exactly fit in sort of the traditional ways that society functions. And I remember, I mean, even in my late teens, being curious about, like, I don't think about some things the way other people think about them, and I don't feel inside myself the way that like I'm supposed to feel. And it really sort of accelerated my inner journey of how do I be who I am when all the signals coming in are telling me that who I am is not who one should be. So yeah, I mean, I think massage school was I'm sure that I struggled, right? But your brain's like, I don't remember that part. Um, uh, I guarantee that there were sort of tears and despair over that 18-month period. And it was tempered by this just liberation that I think started then and has continued since, that I'm actually meeting myself through this transformation. And part of what I think the space of massage school, not even necessarily the curriculum itself, but just if transformation is happening, you're headed in the right direction kind of ethos, that not even like you should be heading in this way toward transformation, right? But like if you're feeling unsettled, nice work, you're doing it right. Um, and that sort of created this sense of I don't actually know where I'm going, and that's okay. And I was still bartending. I still had, I had a dedicated partner, and lots of other parts of my life felt pretty solid. So I think I also just had the right constellation of infrastructure, if you will, to allow me to sort of roll around in that not knowing.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about the entry level program. You mentioned in that last response an 18-month program. Where
Mhm.
did you attend massage therapy school, Cal?
I went to the Potomac Massage Training Institute in Washington, D.C. It is still one of the older schools, and I really like. It's funny to me that I was lucky. PMTI was a great program, it was a great school, and it was down the street. Like I just went online and I was like, I want to go to massage school, and I was like, oh, turns out there's one right over here. Um, and then I think about how that is how I think a lot of people, like, you don't go live somewhere to go to massage school, or at least most people don't, right? You just look at what's the local program and you go there. But I really, having seen over the last 20-ish years how different programs can be, I got super lucky finding that program and just the constellation of instructors and all the pieces that came together to make it what it was.
It sounds like they had a staff of maybe rotating teachers that taught
Hmm.
specific parts of the curriculum.
Yep. And then there were, sort of your classroom hands-on sort of instructors that were your red thread throughout the program.
Any specific texts used in your program that stick out to you, Cal?
We definitely used trail guides. I remember being a big fan of the anatomy coloring book. Other than that, I mean, I know there were textbooks, but textbooks aren't really my favorite. So I don't really remember other ones. And then once I got out of school and I found like medicine hands and the like oncology massage specific type textbooks, those certainly stood out. But as far as like foundational texts, I think trail guides and the coloring book were the main ones that stand out.
Well, let me ask you then, medicine hands, is that kind of like really the first step that you took after finishing your program?
Yeah, in fact, can't remember if it was, I think I actually took it before I was done with school, and they were like, you're not going to get CEs. I'm like, I don't care. I think this is what I want to do. I want to start thinking about and feeling about this right away. But that was, yeah, oncology, massage, and Reiki were the first two sort of CEs that I pursued.
Interesting. I'm
Yeah.
wondering because some people, oncology, very medical, or what we
Hmm.
think of as medical.
Hmm.
And Reiki, most people would categorize that as like pseudoscience or something along those lines, magic even maybe. But
Yeah.
Do you feel a disconnect between those two, Cal, or are you able to reconcile them in any way?
Yeah, I think that I think it's very interesting that the way you sort of say like, yeah, oncology is sort of more medical, which I guess, I mean, I think one of the things that I feel very lucky about in terms of how I see the world or see how we can learn about things is that I want to know what's knowable so that I can really be with the unknowable. And
Mhm.
that is a lot of, I feel very lucky, again, lots of luck, to have met Gail McDonald and Tracy Walton, who both were very knowledgeable about the science and the things that we could know about cancer treatment, how it affects bodies. And both of these people deeply prioritized in the classroom experience. This is about traveling with people on a potentially frightening, challenging journey. And your main job, certainly not to hurt them. And here's all the ways that you could hurt them if you don't know the things that can be known. And at the end of the day, your job is to show up to this person's experience and to not pretend that you know where they're headed or to sort of be a tour guide, but to just be a fellow traveler with this person who is traveling a journey that you yourself may very well travel at some point. And that surrender and inquiry and presence were such big parts of the oncology massage training that I received.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There are other maybe national, regional, local big names, or at least to the area that you really tried to follow, were really inspired by at that time while you were either going in massage school or when you finished?
Yeah, I mean, I think Irene Smith was a really kind of gave birth even to the oncology massage movement, if we want to call it that. And she really, during the most difficult parts of the AIDS epidemic, she was like, these people not only can be touched, but need to be touched. And the stigma that we've attached to this disease is deeply dehumanizing. And as body workers, it is our job to show up here. And I think that, Gail McDonald and I know Tracy Walton were inspired by her work. And then as again, we were talking about you feel like you're out here doing this alone. As I started to make my way into the oncology massage world, I met so many other people who were close to it, starting to do it, had been doing it, but like didn't have any kind of name recognition. And now I feel like I have this incredible community of people that we've all kind of grown up together in this work. And, Karen Armstrong at Beaumont and Carolyn Tague out in California and Liza Dion at Mayo. There's so many. I mean, I could, go on and on about all the people who, and, people like MK Brennan who came from a medical background and brought that perspective to massage therapy and to oncology massage. And as we partnered with physicians and, people that were not even from the discipline of massage who were as passionate and excited about what we were doing. And then, of course, as I started to go to conferences and started to see the interplay of regulation and education and sort of what shapes this crazy profession, this ragtag group of touch pirates, how does this all go together? So, yeah, I mean, I think meeting John Boletto and Martha Menard and Sandy Fritz and, all these people who I was like, oh, like these people, they were in the room where it happened, and just no, and feeling welcomed. By people who are like, oh, thank God, like there's other people coming in now who want to be involved with this. And you could tell that people who've been doing it for 30 or 40 years were just glad to see that there were some of us just coming into the profession who wanted to take up those torches.
Do you still see that continuing? New faces coming in that are really inspired, excited, thankful to be a part?
Yeah, yes. I think the short answer is yes. And it's interesting because I think that, I mean, now having been in this profession for 20 years, I just went to the International Massage Therapy Research Conference last week, and I am going, oh, look at these young people who are coming to these conferences, and they're so excited. And this is the first research conference that they've been to, and seeing programs and people like Ann Blair Kennedy and Nikki Monk who, you know, developing this pipeline of massage therapist PhDs who want to do all kinds of specific research and program development with that sort of through that lens of academia and really kind of, I think, getting into places that we really haven't had access to historically. So I think, yes, there are new people coming in. And I feel like one of the things that we see often at Healwell is not so much new people, but we have we have a lot of people who are about to retire who are cursing and loving us because they thought their career was over. And then they found this work and they're like, oh, I love this work. And it's so much easier on my body. And like I can actually see myself working for 10 more years in palliative care, in oncology, in hospice. So I feel like there is sort of a broad renaissance. And, I struggle with the people coming out of less than exemplary programs getting tossed into the pool, right? And so it's not always about head count. What can people bring and what's the sort of remedial work that we need to do to create the bridge from you attended this very basic program that sort of prepared you to be a minimally trained tradesperson who's unlikely to hurt a healthy person in giving them a massage, and you are feeling pulled to get involved in research, in serious illness care, whatever it might be. And so, how do we create the right kind of transition for those people without saying, like, your education wasn't that good? Because it's not their fault, right? Like, the school was like, we're going to prepare you and we'll take your money. And now you're out here trying to have a career unaware, not knowing what you don't know.
I'm wondering, Cal, I'm going to ask you to opine. Do you feel like part of the problem with that is in our entry level education is that there are so many branches and so many different ways you could take this career?
Yes and no. I think the problem is that we think that's a problem. And that if you we have a sort of mindset, I think, that if you're going to work in a spa, you only need to know XYZ. If you're going to work in a hospital, you need to know these things. If you're going to work in your basement while your kids are at school, you only need this. And I just think that's selling the whole discipline way short. It shouldn't matter where you think you might practice. A, because how many of us are where we started, right? Like we thought we were going to do private practice. And we're like, wow, this is really expensive and hard and whatever. And now I'm working somewhere else. Or I thought I wanted to work for someone else and I hate that. And so now I am in private practice. And how many of us, you start working with people 5, 10 years into your career, people that came to you as quote unquote healthy have just been diagnosed with cancer or now have chronic kidney disease or whatever it might be. So I think that as a profession, we have to just get real about what do massage therapists need to know to care for humans. And it doesn't matter what setting you think you're going to practice in. Our education bar needs to be much higher than it is.
Yeah, the whole thing needs a reboot,
It
perhaps.
needs a reboot for sure.
I
Yeah.
want to share here in Arkansas this year, we had some legislative battles.
Mhm.
And towards the end of it, one of the lawmakers said that, it's massage therapy. You can't overdose on it, as if to make the argument that there's really no harm involved, there's no risk in
Mhm.
receiving massage. And my first thought was, I'm not one of these, I'm not working in a hospital. I'm not working with oncology patients daily
Mhm.
in a hospice setting, but I see people who come to me, they've either had an injury. I feel like I see the gambit in a franchise. I see people who are athletes. I see people who have just received a cancer diagnosis. I see people who have just either they've just started remission. I see people in their most emotionally vulnerable. They've just lost someone. I like it. I see pregnant people. It runs the gambit. You don't know who you're going to see just based off of where you work. And I
Yeah.
feel like that needs to be like our starting point of where we start these conversations of what we really need to know.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think the only other possible antidote, and I'm just going to say it, I know that it's not the most popular idea, would be tiered licensing. Because I think part of my concern is that consumers don't know what they're getting, right? So you're going to pay your $100, whatever it is, for an hour with a person who's calling themselves a massage therapist. And I say it like that because maybe that person really calls themselves a rolfer or a myofascial release therapist or all the things, right, that we call ourselves. But as consumers, I know if I like this person, but I'm going to pay the same for someone who just got out of school as I'm probably going to pay for someone who's been doing this for 20 years. And I don't know what I don't know. So if we had, like, this is a very sort of rudimentary picture, but if we had a tiered licensing system where you have people who I know as a consumer, I'm going to pay a little bit less for this person, and they're going to rub me and relax me. They're not going to know a lot about medical conditions. Their communication skills may or may not be that good. I'm going to go in. my nervous system is hopefully going to be calmed and supported. You might help my tendonitis or whatever. And then I go home. And then if I want someone who is going to help me spot the early signs of disease or who is going to know what to do when something more serious happens, I'm going to pay more for that. And that person will have more training. And I just don't think we've done a very good job as a profession. I mean, even with board certification, we say that it's this high credential, and in many states, what you need to do to maintain board certification is on par with what you need to just be licensed in the state. But there's advertising. You should have a board certified massage therapist. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. At least that person has demonstrated an interest in maintaining an advanced credential. But in terms of what's going to happen on your table, I'm not board certified, but someone who just came out of school who is board certified is going to give you a different session that I'm getting. It might not be better, might not be worse, but we don't know what we're getting. And I think consumers really don't even know what they want, I think, when they seek out a massage therapist.
I think both of those things are true. They don't know what they're getting. And yeah.
Well, and I don't know if this is where you were headed, but we've been having a robust conversation in the online community at Healwell about, is the customer always right? And that people come in and they say, well, why are you rubbing there? I told you that this hurts, right? And so they tell you that they're having knee pain, right? And you begin with their hip or their low back, and they're like, well, that's not where it hurts. And like, would you tell your doctor? Like, oh, I don't think that's the right medicine. I told you these are my symptoms. You should probably give me something else. And not that we are doctors, but there are a few, the plumber doesn't come in and start fixing your sink and you're like, I don't think that's the right wrench. But somehow people feel emboldened as massage recipients to say, oh, I think you should probably do it this way or that way. And, the number of people who will say, how many times in your career has someone on your table said, oh, don't worry, you can't hurt me.
Yeah.
Sort of like push harder. And I'm like, sweet, because that is not my goal. Hurting you is not on the agenda for today. But people think that if they're sore the next day, they got their money's worth. And I firmly believe that if you're sore the next day, in most cases, you got injured. It's not proof that you got a truly therapeutic massage session, but people are drinking water to flush toxins and all this other, just unfounded, ridiculous stuff that even massage therapists aren't equipped to sort of redirect and kind of say, like, talk to me about this, because for a long time, people thought that this is how the body worked, but actually it's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the other part of it. They don't know what they want. And then that kind of makes it hard for the practitioner to know what to provide.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'll just let that hang there. Cal, tell me, have you ever owned or taught at a massage school?
I've never owned a massage school. I did teach at PMTI. I taught in the clinic, and I taught the sort of special populations, pathology overview course for a while.
Did that come after some study in oncology and kind of following that route as a practitioner, or was the turnover, what was it like changing from student practitioner to educator?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember how soon after I graduated, I started working in the clinic as an instructor. And I don't think this is uncommon, but I do feel confident saying it was too soon. I don't know that I had massaged enough people and really sort of developed the necessary perspective to. I could see obvious issues, and I think body mechanics. In retrospect, I think that was one of my main pieces of feedback for people in the clinic was just watching how people would use their bodies in working as massage therapists and, seeing, wow, like this is a pattern that hopefully we can change before you get out there and start doing this many times a day. In terms of the special populations, I think I was just always really interested in that. And I suspect that, as also probably happens at lots of schools, people are like, oh, Cal's into oncology. I bet they'd like to do the, pathology over, because it was everything. It was like, in one weekend day, we talked about people who use wheelchairs. We talked about MS. We talked about ALS. We talked about oncology, AIDS. Like, we just tossed it all together. And, I tried to round up guest speakers so we could have the actual lived experience of people who, but I can't imagine that people took much from that class except, whoa, there's a lot of people who have some specific needs that I was not aware of. So, yeah.
Right. Well, then let me ask you, how long did that last working with it at a school? And I don't know, maybe if you feel like sharing what kind of the impetus to break from that was.
I don't think it lasted terribly long. But I think it was more a function of I just wanted to do other things, and I had my private practice that I started out of massage school, and I had started doing some oncology massage teaching and end of life teaching, and I just wanted to focus on that. And I'm not a very good employee, which doesn't mean like that I don't do my job. I just don't enjoy the experience of sort of being an employee. So working for myself and starting like we were starting to kind of get more interest around what yeah, at the time my business was called Lighthold, and I was offering a variety of classes there, and then as Healwell sort of came more into focus, I kind of Lighthold just sort of fell by the wayside, and I put more energy into Healwell was founded in 2009, so about 4 years after I graduated from massage school, and I had gone through some contemplative training, I think, as well, was part of the inspiration was, what am I on this planet for? And I think there are other things that I could be doing with my time. And yeah, it feels very organic. I don't remember there being any sort of like, I'm out of here. There was no table flipping or anything like that. It was just like, oh, I think other people could do this stuff. I want to do these things over here.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
feel like that's as good of a segue as any to kind of talk about Healwell. 4 years. That's pretty fast moving. I think. Did it feel that way at the time to you?
No, because I mean, so it's really funny. So we got our 501(c)(3 in 2009, and I don't really think I knew I was starting an organization. So, I wonder how many people who started nonprofits would say, like, my thinking about it was, how hard could it be? Right? The problem we wanted to solve was why are massage therapists not more present in the setting of serious illness, whatever that might be, whether it's clinics or homes or just massage therapists are not considered in this environment. And so we were like, okay, this should be a nonprofit because then we can apply for grants and people can donate. And obviously this mission is going to resonate and people will want to support it. When we really started to look at, okay, how come massage therapists aren't in these settings? And I really am we've become a lot more mindful at Healwell that what we're talking about is massage therapists. Because massage, rubbing, is broadly accepted as good for you, beneficial. Like people are like, yeah, massage. But massage therapists, we're not even on the radar for most people, right? So we really wanted to address why aren't we in these settings? And the first thing we discovered was that we don't belong in these settings because we're not prepared by our baseline education to make a value added, safe, clinical contribution to care. So we needed to change education. And knowing that there are lots of things that inform how a school puts together their curriculum, and there are lots of different forces, and it's not as easy as just overhauling your curriculum, right? And so we didn't think that was a reasonable approach to sort of go to schools and be like, you have to do this. So, what's the remedial pathway that we can create so that people who want to do this work or don't even know they want to do this work can develop these skills and that maybe 10% of those skills have anything to do with your hands? And that this was going to be a hard sell. So, this is the first hard part, right? It's like people aren't properly trained and they don't think they need to be trained in these things communication, emotional self-regulation, all these sort of, what we call soft skills. So we knew we needed to address that. Then we looked at the research, big air bunnies again. It's terrible, especially in 2009 when we looked at the existing research, tiny sample sizes, lots of potential for bias in the way the data was collected, really kind of doing this thing called harking, where you hypothesize after results are known. So you could tell that people like just wanted to show that massage works. And so they sort of designed these studies that weren't really studies. And then we actually published a paper at Healwell 2 years ago in the Annals of Palliative Medicine, where we did a review of research about massage, and I'm saying massage because it wasn't all massage therapy, in people with serious illness. More than half the time, the person providing the massage in those studies was not a massage therapist. It was a social worker, a nurse. Sometimes it was just, quote, the researcher. And so it was clear that the data that existed were not pointing to a future for massage therapists. They were sort of pushing their peas around on the plate saying, yep, massage, rubbing, still good, and mostly doesn't hurt people. So we knew we needed to do better research and kind of wake people up to the reality that there wasn't a lot of good research. And then finally, we needed to basically through decades of well-intended volunteerism by poorly trained massage therapists, hospitals had come to expect that we would do this for free. And why shouldn't we do it for free? Because in their minds, we're doing a nice to have. We're rubbing feet, we're rubbing hands, we're making people smile, right? But we're not having any truly clinical effect, again, with the air bunnies. And so how do we demonstrate that working in these environments with this advanced level of training can be a sustainable career? So we hired massage therapists. We pay massage therapists. They're our employees. We had a contractor model for a good, like the first maybe 10 years that Healwell was an organization. And it was just really clear to us, A, that probably we were real close to running afoul of what you're allowed to ask of contractors because they had to wear specific things. They had to have specific training. We had a lot of sort of oversight over how they did their jobs. And we also just couldn't take care of them as contractors. We wanted to offer health benefits. We wanted to offer 401k. We wanted to give you sick time and the things that other people in non-massage jobs have. So that's what we've worked to create. We have about 20 therapists now who are our employees who work all over the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia region, and in all kinds of different programs, in hospitals, in homes, in clinics, wherever people with serious illness and their loved ones happen to be. And it's still real hard. It's a slow walk for sure.
I love a lot of what you said in that answer. Let me ask you, do you feel like you've been successful in solving that problem of not having massage therapists in those spaces?
Well, it's interesting. Like the word success and solve, I'm noticing my nervous system is like, well, those are a little strong. It's sort of like when we say that massage has been proven to blah blah. It's like, well, no, there's a lot of data that point toward this is a useful thing. So I think that we have moved the needle. I think more people are thinking critically about this. I think schools are noticing. I think the associations and regulatory bodies are looking at like how, sort of picking up their piece of this puzzle that we've said is a puzzle. I think more massage therapists are aware that these are skills, these like advanced communication skills, these self-regulation skills are key not only to better clinical care, but just to longevity in their careers. So, and I don't think we've done that alone, I guess is my other piece of resistance is that I feel like one of the things I love about what we do at Healwell is that we don't do anything alone. We partner with anybody who wants to partner, whether it's an individual therapist or a school or, ABMP, AMTA, FSMTB. We've developed these collegial and collaborative relationships with the different organizations and stakeholders to say like what part of this can we think about together and then figure out whose piece it is to sort of change a thing or I mean we don't always agree, but I think there have been so many levers that have been pushed over the years partly based on our work, and our levers have been pushed by other work that's been done. So I do think the landscape is different in some important ways. And I also feel like, are we still having this conversation more often than I'd like?
Definitely. That was kind of, maybe you sidestepped the next question I was going to.
Okay.
Is that hard to form collaborative experiences whenever that, in my opinion, from what I see and what I witness, the associations, our national organizations don't do a great job of working amongst themselves. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's great potential for some huge steps forward if we could all work together.
I agree. And I was talking with some of the leaders of those organizations recently and really saying just this, like, they're like, well, where do you think we should start? And I was like, well, first we have to start by behaving like adults. And really like, and not even in like a so quit being a jerk kind of way, but like we all do better when we all do better. So yeah, 20 years ago, somebody did a thing that stymied this effort, and so now we're still mad at you. And it's like everyone, at the research conference, I was on a panel and we were talking about this, and I said, everyone else is eating our lunch while we're fighting over what kind of bread to put on the sandwich. We don't have time to mess around. Like robots, nurses being taught massage just sort of being tossed into places like no one's waiting for us to get our shit together. So, you know, being able, I think it really, in a lot of ways, comes down to individual leaders in the organizations modeling surrender and generosity and curiosity and being willing to say, like, I don't actually care who gets credit for this. The profession needs this. The future is here, and here are the steps that my organization, your organization can take to get us there. And one of the inherent struggles, I think, is that, for ABMP and AMTA, they are associations. Their job on a very basic level is to keep their members happy. And we already talked about how people don't like change, right? So if you I say this almost in every talk I give, and it may not even be true that he said this, but it is said that Henry Ford said that if he had asked people what they wanted, they would have said they want faster horses. And so when you ask massage therapists what they want, they're too busy trying to make a living. They don't have the 10,000-foot view that leadership at MTF and AMTA and ABMP have. So our job as leaders is to lead, which is not always going to make people happy, at least not in the near term, right? But we know that there are specific changes that have to be made to elevate the profession, the discipline of massage therapy. And every time we start to talk about what those might be, people go, oh, people aren't going to like that. Well, do you like your current existence where you're making a tiny bit of money and you don't have health benefits and where you're seeing people at 6 a.m. on a Sunday because that's the only time they can come and you need that $60? Like, that doesn't sound very good. So I really feel like the coalition, again, big air bunnies, and I've talked with, leaders of coalition organizations, it's not a coalition. If you look up the definition of coalition, there's no coalescing happening. And so, talking about massage history, there are people who have been serving in these organizations long enough to remember when they got poked in the eye, right? And whether they want to or not, there is a piece of, well, we can't let them win because, they don't deserve to have the credit for this. And it's like, meanwhile, therapists are struggling on the ground, and your job is to serve those therapists and create a sustainable profession that we can be proud of. And that's not what's happening. So, I mean, I think those skills of advanced communication and emotional regulation would be a huge benefit to some of these meetings of the big stakeholders. It's like, yeah, I don't agree. I think that's a terrible idea, and I want to hear more. Talk to me about how this could look. And am I willing to look at what me or my organization is doing that's stymieing those efforts? And can we just be like, yep, you're right. We crossed our arms for a long time. And now, in the service of these amazing humans who are struggling to make a living in this profession, we're going to get beyond ourselves and the agenda of our individual organization and know that there's enough air for everybody. And when we succeed as a profession, all of those organizations will do well. People will always either choose ABMP or AMTA, right? Like, that's the beauty of the marketplace, is that there are options, but their ultimate goal needs to be kept front of mind. And I think, I appreciate that we've been willing and able and invited to have those conversations with leadership in those organizations. And, they're not like, yeah, Healwell's right. We gotta, but I think it's all about modeling and being able to say, like, yeah, this is going to hurt, or this is going to be hard, or it's not going to look that great in the beginning, but this is how we get to a future. And having those conversations where maybe we think we're having a meeting to solve a problem, and it turns into 6 meetings, because if we jam a solution into this one-time meeting, nobody's going to be happy with that. So we walk away, we settle, we sort of consider our roles and the roles of others, and we come back together and we go, oh, I really hated when you said that last time we met, but I thought about it some more, and let's, talk about it. It's just, I don't see that happening. And I think that is really how we build community, how we build collaboration, and how we really model abundance and curiosity and a future that we all want to live with.
Make it better.
Make it better.
That's good because, well, you tied that up pretty nicely. I was going to ask you, Cal, save the world. What needs to change? What what are your ideas? But we don't have to.
Well, I do. I mean, I think it's simple but not easy. Individual humans do not love themselves. And so most of what we do is a reaction to this internal, I'll call it self-loathing, even though I know some people will be like, well, I don't loathe myself. It's like, well, just go in there and see what's happening. And yeah, I feel like there's so much projection happening and so little self-awareness, that I feel like if we could bring that to our personal experience and into our relationships, even on this micro level where I'm in a meeting with one other person, that ripple would be huge. I think we're mostly responding from our trauma, and wanting to be seen. And, when you look at the healing professions, there is a disproportionate number of adverse childhood events among people who choose healing professions, whether it be nursing, physicians, psychotherapists, etc. And we're not immune to that as massage therapists, but being wounded doesn't mean that you've like learned from your wounds, right? And I think that's a lot of what we see is just people wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, and wanting love to come from outside when it's not even coming from inside.
I sit here and all I'm really thinking about, Cal, honestly, is do you know how rare you are? You take these huge, scary, potentially life-altering concepts and you make them so inviting to be able to just sit with them and it'll be okay. Do you know how comforting you are?
Oh, thank you. I It has been a journey. I mean, I am so glad that I can't meet my 20 years ago self. Because I don't know that I would like that person very much, or at least find them very soothing. But yeah, again, I have to also lay it at the feet of being gay, being trans, being a parent, having gone through divorce, which again, lots of people listening and watching probably can share those, but those experiences cracked me open. I let them crack me open in a way that I feel like I have like a capital F fearlessness. Like how bad could it be, whatever it might be? Like there's just I feel like I've sat in the flame of the dragon so many times and then be like, oh yeah, a little smoky, but we're cool. That yeah, I mean when you just yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say just because it's not simple, but it has been a journey that feels liberating, and that's I think the thing that keeps bringing me back to wanting to show up to a relationship with people and to say that if you had even a taste of being free of your shame and your stories that don't serve you and like we would all be in a better place if we could relate from this idea that like we're holding ourselves and each other back in ways that we're unwilling to recognize and that you just get a little bit of it and you're like, oh, I want more of that. How do I go toward that aliveness? So thank you. And I mean, these are the people that we've attracted as like our Healwell staff and who make our curriculum because this is what we want for people. And when you have that, you will be a better massage therapist, a better social worker, a better parent, like just and better in a like it's more fun kind of way, not like in a self-improvement kind of way.
Well, I'm one of those few people. I think self-improvement is fun.
Oh yeah. Oh, same, same. I can't be trusted actually to yeah, yeah.
What I'm also hearing while you just said that was I liked if you could have a taste of what that liberation, what that freedom feels like, and not agreeing with the stories that don't serve you anymore and holding on to those things that you really attach an identity and self to, right? I see that also it has such a parallel to the profession of massage therapy as a whole, right? How long
Definitely.
to hold on to these things that don't serve us and don't serve our clients.
Mhm.
Also, we got to tie it back into the clients too, because
Absolutely.
that's what we're here for. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I'll invite you to further go with that, or I can jump into my next question if you
Yeah,
like.
well, I'm sure it will come back around. So let's jump. I'm ready.
You also said to kind of go back to Healwell just a little bit. You also said something that you felt that you needed was better research. Do you
Mm.
feel like we have seen strides in that?
Yes and no. I think that I think there is a small group of people who are aware of how we have to up our game in terms of research. I think there is still sort of and again, we don't have the resources to have this battle, but do we measure mechanism of action or do we measure clinical outcomes? And every day of the week, I'll say clinical outcomes because who cares why, right? And honestly, I will admit that in my sort of limited way, if we know why, then somebody can and will invent a medicine to do that thing, right? And what we do is far too complex for that. And I think this is the piece that's still sort of missing. I think that we are seeing better powered studies, which means they have like a bigger sample size that we can really show effect. I think that people are designing studies that are working to pull out bias in terms of data collection so that someone who's unrelated to the massage interaction is collecting that data for a lot, in a lot of studies, the massage therapist is at the bedside saying like, rate this, right? And so the person in the bed wants to make the massage therapist happy. And there's a lot of, so I think we're working to pull that out. I think the piece that's still missing is implementation. How do we think about massage research as a mechanism to move massage therapists into these spaces? How do we design studies that demonstrate the unique value of this provider in this environment? And also mixed methods. When I massage, I provide you with a massage therapy session, and you tell me before the session that your pain is a 4, and afterwards it's a 2. Okay, what does that mean? Pain is this deeply personal experience. And, in one of the studies we published last year or the year before, we asked people about pain, distress, and peace. And one of the things we saw was that a lot of people would say that their pain hadn't changed, but their peace had increased. And this is where the rubber meets the road for massage therapy, I think, because it's about your experience. So if pain, we had a gentleman who one of our therapists worked with, who she asked him how his pain was after the session. And he said, it's still a 7, but pain is not my only experience anymore.
Mm.
That has to matter, and it does matter. And we haven't done a good job of creating research that, they always say like the effects of massage therapy are temporary. Oh, do you mean like oxycodone and morphine and aspirin and every, right? Like there's no medicine you give one time and you're like, wow, done and dusted. That was great. So this is not an inherent failing of massage therapy that the effects are temporary, but also maybe the effects on your pain are temporary, but now we're starting to look at this concept called self-efficacy, which is like after a massage, this person who hasn't been able to do the laundry or do the dishes or make a meal for themselves is able to do that. And that matters, right? And of course we have to look at it through how are we saving dollars in healthcare, right? Where are we preventing people from going to the emergency department, which I think we can show if we design those studies properly. So I think the awareness is growing that we have been measuring massage therapy like it's a pharmacological intervention, and we have to stop doing that. But I think it's going to take some real creativity and just some hardcore advocacy to get funders to pay for studies that really measure this very complex thing that we do.
All right. Again, I can't help but ask, and you just came from the MTF's research conference.
Yeah.
Tell me, is there hope?
Oh, there's hope. And seriously, I feel like this is my 4th trick, as it's called. And they lit a rocket at this one.
Ooh.
There, it was 3 days of like fun, collegiality, collaboration, people saying like, I'm in the next town over from you and I didn't even know you existed. And why don't we do a thing? And really energizing the practice-based research network as a thing that individual therapists who don't want to be, quote, researchers can participate in creating this body of knowledge that can move the profession forward. So I think even some of the studies that were presented were very creative, and we're measuring those sort of more ineffable aspects of things and looking at all of the different ways that massage therapists can ameliorate suffering, and that suffering can be defined so broadly. Sarah Fogarty from Australia did an incredible presentation about providing massage therapy for women who had had pregnancy loss or stillbirth previously, and incorporating massage therapy in their care as they tried again to have a child. And, looking at these therapists who work in this study, yes, they had advanced prenatal and pregnancy training, but they also had grief training. And, this is like, we have to have massage therapists who are prepared to bring all of the skills to this population that we're trying to study, instead of just snatching some massage therapists off the street and being like, I don't know, we need people to rub for this study. So I do think there's hope. I think that there is a lot of new energy and a lot of just people figuring out. One of the big messages, I feel like the takeaways from MTRIC for me was, you don't have to have a PhD to make an impact in research. You don't have to want to write. You don't have to know statistics. Research is such a team sport that there's so many ways that people can be involved. And I think that MTF is really trying to speak just the regular language to pull this sort of like academia mystique off of research, so that massage therapists really feel like they can get involved and bring real value. So yeah, I'm hopeful about research in particular.
Right. Awesome. Since we're kind of talking about research, I want to ask you, Cal, what do you think, if you have any thoughts,
Mhm.
about the future of research in terms of massage history?
Man, talk about a thing that is a hard sell. Right. I mean, truly, because for me, I think it's fascinating and very exciting and imperative to creating a different future. I
Mm.
feel like one of the things that I have seen in the 20 years that I've been in this profession is that there's not a good, your average therapist, most therapists aren't aware of what's gone before. And so we keep kind of trying to create things that have already been created and that have been shown that they're not as effective and just sort of this is not a new conversation. And I think that the better we can get at unpacking the layers of history and all of the ways that people have and haven't worked together and where we really have moved the needle and where the needle has like completely come unmoored and like fallen down into the body of the whatever the measurement tool is, um, that can only help us. But I think it's a hugely oral tradition. So the ability for us to gather that history, that's going to be the biggest challenge, I think. And because I think once you start to see what's in the history, it becomes interesting to people. Now, I mean, I read a lot of history, so maybe I can't be trusted to assess what normal people are interested in. But I think that really having a solid grasp on our history and a peek into it. I think that like you can report historical events and there's nothing live about that, right? But if you can say like this happened because this happened and like this person said this at this meeting and it led to this other thing that, that's the kind of stuff that people go, "Oh, like individual people made these things happen or groups of actual people." And that I feel like inspires agency and inspires people to get involved in the next chapter of the history.
Ooh, inspiring agency. What a concept.
Indeed.
I don't know if I've ever thought about drawing a line to that in history. That's brilliant, Cal.
Thanks. Do what I can.
Let me ask you then, are you involved in any sort of collecting or preserving of massage history, even in small ways?
I I don't think so. I mean, I'm going to be doing some stuff with you all, and then hopefully, I'm not good at collecting things. I'm kind of a minimalist, and so I just tend to get rid of stuff that I don't use anymore. But I'm looking forward to being a part of that. I do think it's important, and I'm so glad that there are people who have brains that are different than mine that have saved all the things, right? And I love to paw through the things and like make those connections. So I'm hoping that my perspective on that and my weird skill set will be valuable to people who want to do that.
I can't agree with you more. I am so thankful there are people out there with brains different than mine and that think differently than me.
Yes,
As much as it's uncomfortable, just thank goodness, because how would anything else get done?
truly. Yes.
Let's jump ahead. Let's talk about some personal insights.
Okay.
Uh, Particularly, this episode will be coming out next month.
Okay.
The idea here at SOMA, we want to uplift voices that maybe aren't always heard, and specifically identities of queerness, trans identity, and gender in massage therapy. So, to celebrate Pride Month in June, I want to ask you, can we engage in a conversation about gender and identity?
Speaking of rabbit holes, absolutely. Yes. I'm here for it.
All right, awesome. So you're very generous. I find you to be very generous in your openness and vulnerability as a transgendered massage therapist. Can you talk to me about your journey with gender?
Oh man. Uh yeah. So I just had my 49th birthday. And I, again, like I didn't come from a background that sort of encouraged or prioritized curiosity or even really introspection. Where I grew up was it was a rural town in New Jersey. I didn't know any gay people. I definitely didn't know any trans people. And slurs were like tossed around in my house. Like, I would hear fag and lesbo and all kinds of things like that from people who were taking care of me, right? Who were tasked with raising me. And I think it took, I don't even know exactly when I was like, that's not cool. Like that doesn't make any sense. And why would we say these things? And I went to some different high schools through my high school career. And one of those schools I went to was in another rural town in South Carolina, where the student body was at least 50% Black. And it was weird because it was one of these communities where certainly like plantations had been alive, and I don't know if we can say plantations are well, but had been doing what plantations do. And that there were families in this town who the white families had enslaved people that like now these people were colleagues, right? Like my great ancestors owned your mom's, grandparents, et cetera. And that like the unrest of that. And I think I really was the last one to my own coming out party. I I had to, my lips were on another woman's lips and I was like, this makes so much sense. And when I came out, most people were like, yeah, we know. And I want to be clear, obviously, that sexual orientation and gender are not the same, and often are not even related. But for me, that was sort of the way that I was introduced to gay culture. The ideas of femme and butch and sort of which gender markers are you taking on as a member of, in my case, the lesbian community? And I had always leaned more toward what people would call butch. I mean, I was not butch, like to be real clear, in retrospect, that's not a thing that I ever really was, but I definitely leaned more masculine. And it really took people who were thinking about this a lot more to introduce me to ideas of like, well, why don't you use they, them pronouns? And I was like, and this was probably like 15 years ago, somebody asked me that, and I was like, what is that? What would that even be? And then I started to think about it a little bit and I was like, huh, that does feel more accurate. Like, and then, and that really started my like, so what is it about she that doesn't feel right? And of course, it's all about the culture. So there are probably cultures on this planet where she doesn't have the same type of baggage that it has in this culture. And that would make me less bristly about that, right? And then I look at people who are, I would say, like I have decided to call myself trans because I want to be generous and show up for this experience for people. Like I could easily say that I'm a butch lesbian, right? And I could use she, her pronouns, and that would be fine too. I mean, I have had top surgery. I definitely have read a lot more about trans experience. And I think that on some level, at the risk of being glib, we're all trans, right? The idea that there's male or female is ludicrous. And we've all been so painfully indoctrinated that the idea that today I feel this way, or this morning I feel this way, and this afternoon I feel this other way, and that my clothes or the way that I speak, or, all these other sort of external manifestations of how I feel inside. Because, of course, there's gender identity and gender expression, which are also not the same. And, people who don't think about those things are like, anyway, I'm confused now. And it's like, it's not actually that confusing. I think what you are is in pain because a piece of you is aware that you didn't pick your expression or your identity. You traveled the path that was presented to you, and it felt close enough that you were like, cool. And so, I love to talk with people like when I'm doing a talk or, working in a workshop and kind of say like, so why did you put that lipstick on this morning? And people don't know why, right? Because I've always put lipstick on because I'm going out of the house. Of course, I'm going to put on lipstick, right? Or, I'll ask a cisgendered man, like, why did you put that necktie on? And they're like, well, because that's what men wear to a meeting or whatever. And I'm like, so what if you didn't? Like, what would happen? And it is not a thing that cisgendered people have had to think about. And I feel like what's fun about it, and my spouse says that I'm too nice to people because I get misgendered all the time, and I'm like, it's not about me. Like, when people misgender me, I don't like it. I'm not saying like it's no big deal, but I'm not mad at you. You have been taught, your brain is formed with these two very clear pathways. And I always have people are very helpful in the restroom. You might experience this also. And I always use the women's restroom if I have to pick one because I'd rather get yelled at than beat up is sort of my rationale. And it's very common that, someone will say, well, this is the ladies' room. And I'm like, I'll either say I know, and we're both in the right place, even though I don't really consider myself a lady, but, or I'll say, I know, but they don't have a bathroom for me. So this is as close as I get. And, I try to make it funny because people, they're trying to help, right? And they're also a little bit afraid. They're not sure of what. And those are all very human responses to a thing that is invisible. And I think that's what people hate to see, that this thing that guides their lives has is under the radar. They don't even realize, we don't even realize how many choices we make that aren't really our choices. Jay Krishnamurti is a contemplative teacher, and there's a quote that he says something like, "You think you're thinking your thoughts. You're not. You're thinking the culture's thoughts." And man, Americans in particular, we're individuals, right? Like, I own this. This is free will. And it's like, well, not really. And even when you just change environments, like I was at a gathering this weekend where there were other trans people. And even in that environment, I'm like, oh, right, I'm not the only one here, and that feels different. So it's fun. It's fun to me to notice how much of a house of cards we actually live in, and to just gently invite other people to be like, liberation's over there.
All you have to do is choose to be liberated in most cases.
Yes. And maybe you'll still want to wear heels over there. I'm not saying anything you're doing is wrong. I'm just saying that maybe you haven't thought or felt about it. And that liberation lies in, I know why I'm putting this on, or why I'm not putting this on, or why I'm carrying my body in this way. And I am, as much as any of us can ever choose anything, there's a level of awareness here that wasn't there before I started to really think about this. And that's when you really can kind of, in Buddhism, we say like your actions are your only possessions. And I feel like, yeah, this is, how can they be if, or at least you're not really owning them if you haven't been with them and been willing to be like, huh, what if this was true about me? I mean, this is one of the things in conflict resolution. And when we're doing like anti-racism work and people are like, well, I'm not racist. And it's like, well, just take a minute and like, what if this thing was true about you? Like, we're just spitballing here. Doesn't mean it is true. It doesn't leave this room. But what happens inside you when you go, oh, like, what would this mean if this was true? And then we go, oh, well, it would mean I have to do this and I have to, right, but not today. Like, you're aware now, and you can decide how much, how quickly, how intensely you want to make change. But you can't make change if you don't notice. And so the noticing is fun.
Right there it is again, Cal. You're making huge, that is a total world shift, so comforting and so inviting to be in. There's a lot to unpack, so bear with me.
Yeah.
I loved what you said about being the last one to your coming out party. I always say, I get frustrated. I always say, I didn't decide I was queer. It was everybody else around me that pointed it out to me. And now you're mad at me for showing up that way, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, this is, I mean, I feel like one of the things even when we talk about liberation and sort of really, you were saying you love self-improvement. And I think self-improvement, it's such a, like, it should be like self-meeting, or because what's fun about self-improvement is you're like, oh, that was in there. I didn't even have access to that, but this is me. Like, this is wisdom that I didn't know how to get to. And so it's not tacking on stuff to you, right? It's actually revealing you. So it should be called like self-revealment or something. The only people who are more invested in your stories about who you are than you are your spouse, your kids, because we're all basing who we are. This is the house of cards, right? Like, as long as you are this way, I can be this way. But if you start to be more or less this other way, then I have a choice to make. You're not making me do anything, but I now become aware that I do this thing because I can count on you to do or not do this other thing. And as soon as we start to shift, everybody has a choice to make. And we don't want to make choices. We want everything to just keep going the way it is. So it does. I mean, this is when I was talking about like crouching in the flame of the dragon. I feel like every time that I have like set a boundary or stopped doing a thing that I've sort of done out of habit or out of trauma or out of whatever, I sort of like wait for the repercussion, right? But I don't move. I mean, sometimes I've moved. We've all moved, right? But I'm like, I'm just gonna stay here until like the dragon runs out of breath or whatever, and then you just keep going, and then you get better at it, and you go, oh, well, I survived that, and better than survived it. Like I feel lighter, I feel whatever. So I do. I mean, I think that your point is well taken. That it is when you're mirroring this to me, and then you're mad when I embody it. Like that seems like a you problem.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
The only thing I can hold on to.
Yeah.
I also like you brought up this American individualism idea,
Mm,
but then you have just these two genders in front of you, obviously more. We know that.
right. Right.
You have these individualism, but then it goes back to like even your work with the Ford company, so much goes into making you think in those two very specific ways and what's acceptable on one route and what's acceptable on the other route.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can you
Well,
be an individual when it's laid out for you like that? How do you be intentional?
yeah. Well, and how do you, I mean, like we talk about authenticity in some of the classes that we teach and just in people that I hang out with. And I think we have this idea that authenticity means you have purple hair or you're a bald lady or you're like, and that's not it, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone notices you when you walk into a room. That authenticity is this like I feel like it parallels forgiveness, that like forgiveness is actually this deeply personal act that we do for ourselves. But our culture has decided that forgiveness is me going to you and saying, I'm sorry I hurt you. I need you to say you forgive me, right? That like it needs someone else. And I feel like this is a similar sort of thing that like I know that I have come a long way, quote unquote, in terms of being aware of how I want to present in the world and what stories were lies and how to make the invisible visible. And I am responding to culture. Full stop. I have no illusions that I am somehow free from, if I moved to a town where everybody looked like me, I might go a little more femme, right? Because I don't have to hold that line. So I know that I am engaging in advocacy by presenting in this way. And that, I guess, if there's awareness, that's what it is, right? But it's not that I look like this or I dress like this or I present like this because I don't care. Oh, I care. I care a lot.
Right.
Right. So it is a curated nonchalance. And I feel like the more we can laugh at ourselves and the more we can be aware that, like, there's a certain level of imprisonment, feels like almost too big of a word, but that, like, you can't escape culture and be in the world. I mean, you could go be an ascetic and live in a cave and, it would probably be pretty peaceful in there, although maybe not because you're still there.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be in relationship with other humans, you will bounce off of them. You will bend and sand and sharpen in response to those things. And that's why it's brave to even be in relationship because you will change. And, when I was going through my divorce, actually, my now ex-wife gave me this thing. It was a definition of selfishness. And it said selfishness is the ability to be with oneself in the presence of another. That sort of, she's like, I want you to like reframe this idea of selfishness, that it is actually about being able to stay in what Buddhists sometimes call the one seat, like to stay here in your authenticity, regardless of what other forces are around you. And it's not that you ignore those forces or that they don't affect you. It's about knowing that I'm still this person. What's true is still true, even though there's all this other stuff happening. So I want to, I would love, I imagine a world where most people experience the push of the binary as violence.
Mhm.
That like, it's just a lie. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of politics. There isn't two in almost anything, right? But and that really is deeply limiting and just sad. And so the fun is over here where there's a whole like, array of options.
The fun is over there, the love is over there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
And the pain is over there, the nuance is over there. Like, I mean, it's not like a party all the time, right? But it's real.
Yeah.
It's like you're really feeling the things and connecting in your humanity. And that's not for everybody, to be clear. Like there are people who like, yep, I hear what you're saying. I do not want to go to that party. I have no interest in seeing myself, feeling the feelings. I have very carefully curated this world where nothing touches me and I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. But if you're even curious, go on over because it's pretty great.
And you can leave anytime.
You can leave anytime. Absolutely. I mean, you won't want
That's
to. That's the thing is you'll start to miss yourself and then you'll come back. But yeah, but you can leave. We're not going to lock the doors.
right. I also like what you said that it's just something that cisgendered people don't even have to be conscious about. They don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if this is just my experience. Gender is everywhere. You can't escape it. It's
Nope.
so heavily laden in at least American culture.
Yeah.
And you know, you talk about the choices between bathrooms, and I couldn't relate more. Does it feel like a betrayal to self when you have to make those choices? It almost does to me, Cal.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I just don't want to spend my energy that way. I feel like when I read things about like the actual benefit of diverse groups and of belonging, that one of the primary benefits is that people who typically don't belong, you get so much more of them because they're not spending their time worrying about, do I present this way? Do I present that way? They can just be who they are and bring all of that beautiful whatever it is. And I do feel like the fact that I'm calculating how badly do I have to go to the bathroom when I just want to like enjoy my friends, or like I will send someone else, like I'll be like, go check it out. Is it gendered one holers or non-gendered one holers, or is it like a cattle call? And then I just can prepare myself, right? And I change the way I walk in there. If I make eye contact with somebody, I smile in this way that I hope is very female, right? Just so we can all be in there to do what we're there to do. But I could use that energy in so much more valuable ways. So I I guess it probably is sort of a betrayal. Um, and it just makes me mad that like I don't, I mean, not that our resources are finite when it comes to love or whatever, but man, I'd sure like to spend that bandwidth some other way.
Absolutely. And then also like the final piece that I want to go back to is about pronoun use. And
Mm,
I'm also of the mindset I don't really spend a lot of time correcting people. I
hmm
tell, anytime that I teach a CE, I tell my students, hey, these are my pronouns. If you get them wrong, that's totally fine. We don't have
hmm
to make a big deal about it. I'm not going to make a big deal about it. Because if I spent the time and the energy correcting people on my pronouns,
Yeah,
wouldn't get anything else in the world done. There's
right.
no space for anything else but that because it
Yeah.
happens all the time.
Definitely. Well, and I think uh, I would say that it doesn't even make as much of an impact when I correct you as it does when, like, my cisgendered spouse corrects you, or when you're just talking about someone who uses different pronouns and they're not even there, and someone who is cisgender says, "Hey, I think their pronouns are blah blah." Like, that's when people go, "Oh, like this isn't just about the squeaky wheel. This is where language and culture are going." And I don't want to be that guy who doesn't understand that that's what's happening. And I feel like this is another thing that's really fun is that when I say to people, because you ask me what my pronouns are because I look weird, right? Like I probably use different pronouns, right? But you'll go up to a blonde-haired woman with earrings and high heels and just assume she, her. And inviting people to think about, why do you think you know this person's pronouns? You get in the habit of just asking everyone. I do some standardized patient training where I get to be a trans person for medical students, and they conduct like a health intake with me. And when we do the debrief after, I say, like, the best thing you can do for your potential patients who are trans is to interrogate your own gender. It's not about figuring out how to show up for people who are different. It's about noticing that you actually have a lot more in common than you realize. And that if you start to think about how gender shows up for you, it'll open up all of these, like, it won't feel like this Herculean effort to help this person feel like they belong. It'll be like, oh, yeah, why do I just assume gender? And why do I just assign pronouns for people who, quote, look the way they're supposed to look? And I love to sort of get under the language and be like, this is the assumption. And the they, them as well. Like we've been using singular they, them forever. But people don't notice that that's a thing that, my example is always there's a wallet on the ground. You don't say someone dropped his or her wallet. You say someone dropped their wallet. And people go, oh, yeah, I guess that's right. And, but we're going to need so much reminding and so much training and really so much grace. Like, it's just, I don't want to be that person who spends my life correcting the pronouns. But I do want people to think harder about how did we get here? And, how could we get somewhere better?
Some rabbit holes I can't help, but just can't resist, Cal.
Yeah.
You yourself correcting the pronouns doesn't have as much of an effect as perhaps a cisgendered correcting them on your behalf or in your
Hmm.
absence. And the first thing I thought of was Benny Vaughn has this idea of wielding your privilege to
Hmm.
those with less. That's something
Yep.
that came up to my mind.
Definitely. Well, and when I'm talking with the medical students, they're like, well, how do I know when I should ask somebody about their pronouns? I'm like, if they're breathing, you should ask them. And they're like, haha. And I'm like, no, seriously, it's an incredible act of advocacy to ask a cisgendered person what their pronouns are. And I said, and I want you to be prepared because I have had more than a few cisgender people go, what's a pronoun? Um, because really, like, as soon as you explain it, they go, you can't talk without pronouns, right? We use them all the time. But if you just get in the habit of asking every single patient what their pronouns are, you will just build that in, but also you'll be educating because people will go, well, what's a pronoun? So you get to teach them. And they'll say, well, why does this matter? And then you can also say, well, actually, people use different pronouns, and I just want to make sure that I'm seeing you and whatever. And I said, yeah, and some patients will be like, well, I don't need that woke crap and whatever. And I'm like, and so I guarantee you that the discomfort you feel when a patient pushes back on you is nothing near how it feels inside me when I get misgendered. So just take that hit. Be willing to take that hit and spread the word. This will, I still believe, even in the current environment, that 20 years from now, pronouns are not going to be like, we're going to be they, theming and zering and whatever, and people just go about their lives. But that's how it happens, right? Is in these tiny little interactions, and particularly when people wield their privilege and say, like, yeah, I'm willing to make somebody else uncomfortable, or even to feel some discomfort myself. And then we never know what the trickle is, right? Maybe this person hates this interaction at the time, but then they're driving home and they're like, yeah, huh, that's interesting. And then they talk to their friends about this jerk at the, blah, blah, who asked them about this. And then somebody else says, oh, well, my niece or my nephew actually uses these pronouns. And suddenly we go, oh, it's a lot more common than we realize and a lot more doable. Like our brains are real flexible, you guys. Give yourself credit.
Well, and we also see these kind of same things. It started with just being okay with gay relationships,
Yeah,
being okay with the idea of gay marriage, and then being okay with the idea that there's transgendered people out there. And
yeah,
then it's just, yeah, it's gradual steps forward to where it's just commonplace to
totally.
hear a man drop my husband, right?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Okay, Cal, perhaps that's the last of the rabbit holes I want to fall into.
All right.
I want to ask you though, you're certainly a role model for queer massage therapists, even massage therapists that don't identify in the queer community. You're a personal hero of mine, someone that I really try to follow, emulate. I want to ask you though, when you began your entry level education, or throughout your career, were there other transgendered or queer massage therapists that you look to or outside of massage therapy that really lit the path for you, so to speak?
Well, it's funny that you say that because yes, but not because they were queer. I'm thinking about how many queer people there are in the massage profession. And I would love to know the statistics of like where massage therapists fall because maybe it's just who I hang out with. But like my first two like primary teachers in the oncology massage world were gay women. And I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, even as I think about people who are my colleagues in this world, they're either identify as gay or lesbian or queer. But it's interesting. I don't remember feeling like that was part of why they inspired me. But maybe, gosh, I'm going to have to noodle on that a little bit. I mean, I imagine that it was very normalizing, having, begun that journey 20 years ago and being like, oh, well, yeah, these people are doing it and people respect them. And, like they're known for this thing they do, not for being, gay or queer or trans or whatever. So, but definitely, I don't know that I had any trans people, in my journey until somewhat recently. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you then, how did you know that you could kind of be a role model or someone who could set a path? I know I can't be the only one that sees you this way, Cal.
So I don't want to be that person who's like, I don't know, I just live my life. But I don't like, I am glad that that has been the case because I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job. And I want people to feel liberated and happy and like they're not working, right? Like what they do is fun and important and that they're supporting their fellow humans. And I don't know that like I didn't even want to be the executive director of Healwell. So when like you say, did it feel fast? I'm like, no, because I resisted being the executive director for like 5 years. And finally the board was like, listen, we need an executive director and you're it. Yeah, I feel like, I was the captain of my soccer team in college and, student council and all that. Like I've always sort of like been like, somebody needs to say this thing. So I don't know that I would say that I had any moment where I was like, you know what, I could probably be a role model. Mostly, I think I was just like, somebody needs to say a thing about this. And then people go, oh, will you say more things about things? And then sort of here we are. But I mean, I'm always grateful when people are like, oh, I read this thing that you wrote, or I heard you give this talk and it did this thing. And I'm like, I'm so glad because I don't necessarily set out to do that. And it's really easy to feel like, I don't know, I'm just throwing bricks into the Grand Canyon, right? I wouldn't want to do anything else. We talk at Healwell, like, at least we're going to go down fighting, right? Because I don't know if what we're doing is going to change the world, but this is how I want to take my steps. And so if it also changes the world, great. But it changes my world, and like the climate in here is as close to what I want it to be as possible. And so if that can ripple out in a useful way, I I hope that keeps happening.
As someone who is outside of the Healwell bubble, let's call it, I think it's already changed the world. So maybe it's not where you want it to be, but I think there's definitely an argument that there's a massage therapy world before Healwell and a massage therapy world after Healwell. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you then, just to close out this part, Cal, what does pride mean to you, and why do you feel it's important?
I feel like, I mean, talk about history and not that gay people are, I mean, I think at least in American culture, we're much sort of safer and more mainstream, safer personally and safer for other people, than we have been. But I feel like pride is about all of the suffering that's gone before and all the advocacy that's gone before to get it to this place, like you were saying, like where a man can say, my husband, and people don't go, what? And that it is about safety and it is about community and it is about, I guess I would say I want people to understand that it's not about exclusivity because I think people are like, well, why don't we have a straight pride? And it's like, well, I mean, the world is a straight pride parade in a way. And you can come. We want you to be there, right? Like pride is not nearly as useful when it's just us. Like the more of us that can do this together. So I will say that while I've thought a lot about gender, I've probably not thought as much about my sexual orientation and sort of, but I know that I am able to be this person with, I would say no fear, but probably minimal fear because of all of the people who have gone before me, who have lived and not lived because of the advocacy that they have, engaged in, and just so many individual people being willing to say, that's not cool, or how about if we did it this way? And, you have the famous people, but it's really about all the individual people doing all their little acts of advocacy that add up to the world is different now than it was 20 years ago.
Right. And that's so
Yeah,
closely, you could say the exact same thing for everything that's happened in the massage profession over the last century.
definitely.
We're coming so close on, and you keep covering these berms that have rabbit holes under them. We don't have to, but I mean, that opens up a whole lot of questions. And I know Healwell has done some work on this
Mhm.
about the appropriateness of sexuality with
Mm.
in terms of massage therapy and touching, and where all of these kind of get close together. And maybe there's some area where it's okay and other areas where it's not okay. And I'm wondering if briefly we could touch on where sexual identity touches massage and where that's comfortable, and just invite you to riff on that perhaps.
Well, I blame the Puritans. We'll just say that because I feel like the struggle in the massage profession is that in Western culture, intimacy and sex are synonyms in a really unfortunate and reductive way. And what we do is very intimate. And, maybe to get a little bit granular, I was talking recently with some folks about how we were taught to address certain situations in on the table, and that like one person in this group that I was talking with said that they were taught in school that if someone cries, you just leave the room. And I was like, really? Like I'm on the table, something has happened for me that has made me cry, and you're like, I'm a go. Like I'm out. Just knock when you get your shit together, right? Or what, whatever the assumption is, and that so many of us had stories about like if the client gets an erection, you either say, I see that you're having a response and you leave the room, or you just end the session. And that's not how nervous systems work. Like this erection has very little to do with you, person, and whether you are straight or gay or bi or whatever it might be. Like this person is not actually coming onto you or being aggressive. And humans don't have the skill to be in the space of other nervous systems. And I feel like this is really when we talk about, I really want massage therapy as a profession to stop demonizing sex work. Sex workers are not the enemy. The existence of sex work is not why massage therapy struggles for legitimacy. And the sooner we can uncouple that conversation, the better. But then we toss in the human trafficking conversation, and then we think that this is our fight, which is also not our fight. It's not unrelated, but our struggle for legitimacy as healthcare providers is not about human trafficking or sex work. And our cultural beliefs about sex and about intimacy and about what people's nervous systems do when they are in a state of relaxation, our vocabulary about that is terrible. And we're definitely not taught how to manage humans in massage school, right? We're taught how to rub them. And we're taught like some phrases, right? About like what to say if X, Y, or Z happens. We're not taught to be in the field with this other person's nervous system and how do I handle what's happening right in front of me right now? Because I'm not saying that there are people who have been victimized as massage therapists, and people have used sex as a weapon against massage therapists, and massage therapists have used sex as a weapon. So it's not that this conversation is like massage therapists are making too big of a deal, but it's another place where we've sort of gone good, bad, binary, right? There's sex and there's massage. I'm like, sometimes they go together, but it's real complicated and we should talk about it and we should feel about it. And as a profession, we should keep our eye on the ball because our struggles with legitimacy are about our own house. They're about education, they're about professional identity, they're about all of these things that sex workers have not done to us and human traffickers have not done to us.
I'm just sitting in gratitude that there are conversations like that happening and someone in your position and someone with your intelligence being able to articulate those things. Because it's not an easy thing to make that argument. It's not a popular thing to say, and I'm glad that you're saying them. So thank you again, Cal.
Certainly.
I want to be respectful of our time. So let's move into closing thoughts.
Okay.
What are you most proud of?
Hmm. I feel like there's so many things, but I think right now I am so proud that Healwell is a place that attracts, like when I look around at our staff, I'm so proud of the people that those people are, and that whatever we made at Healwell makes those people want to work at Healwell, and that the therapists who come are the same, like just want to be in the nuance and that we can, I hope that we have created the psychological safety and sense of belonging that really welcomes all comers and that it feels accidental, but obviously it's not, right?
Awesome. Yeah, you got a lot to be proud of in
Thank
Healwell,
you.
and keep going. I can't
Thank
wait.
you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't covered? Something I should have asked that I haven't asked in this interview?
I think I just want to invite, there's that word again. I would like to eradicate just from our language because it's so reductive, but I want to invite massage therapists to pick their heads up. And I know it's hard because I know that we're all working so hard to make a living and take care of people. Pick your heads up and notice how and if you're taking care of yourself and that we need you. There's such a small group of people who are actively involved in creating the future of massage therapy. And that won't get us to a place that we all want to live. And so, in whatever small way you can, read the articles, ask the questions, talk with people who don't agree with you. The biggest mistakes happen when we are with people who are like, "Yep, that's a great idea," and then 6 months later, you go, "Well, I didn't think it was that good idea, but I didn't want to, pick a fight." Um, so be curious and know that really all movements are the result of the act of thousands and lots of little acts of thousands and thousands of people who are imagining something similar that isn't here yet but could be.
I love what you said earlier too. I'm just going to make a connection here. We
Please.
have the luxury of time, and we need it's an all hands on deck thing. I feel like we're so far behind that we're playing catch up with time that we do not have and that we're not going to be afforded. So
Yeah.
echo exactly what
Yes.
if you could record and preserve any deceased person's account of massage history, who would you choose?
Huh. That's interesting because it would be limited by like when that person dies. Because I'm thinking of all these people who have influenced even like wellness
Mm,
and like I think about Kellogg and certainly about like the first massage therapists. And I don't know if everybody will know this person. Probably lots of people won't know this person, but Elaine Kalenda. She was an instructor at the Boulder School of Massage Therapy, and some of you may have seen her YouTube video where she talks like Julia Child and talks about fascia while she holds a raw chicken. You should try and find it. It's amazing. But just a really thoughtful, curious person who was so interested in education and really reaching students. I would love to hear her perspective.
thank you for catching me learning. I can't wait to try and look that video up and then
Yeah,
someone else to look into in our history, our annals.
definitely.
All right, kind of on the flip side of that, who would you encourage or challenge to participate in future episodes of this? Who would you put in your hot seat right now?
Have you guys already talked to John Boletto?
We are trying our damnedest to get
Okay.
to John.
I made a list the other day because I was just thinking about all of the people who have sort of shaped my journey. I mean, Patty Glenn has been involved with FSMTB and all that stuff for so long. I feel like Brianne Pinkson, who worked at Dartmouth Hitchcock for like 40 years as a licensed practical nurse and a massage therapist who just retired, she has seen all kinds of things. I mean, I have a huge list. I'll send it to you. But there are so many people, I think, who sort of aren't famous and have changed what the profession is and has become.
They're out there, and it's so important that we talk to them and that we learn about them and the work that they did. And what I really love about history, the choices that they made and why those choices were made. That
Hmm.
choice, I think, is so important.
Yes, I agree.
All right, please tell us what you have coming up next, how our listeners, viewers can get in contact with you or Healwell and learn more.
Boy, what do we have? Well, we have, of course, by June. Oh, well, June, there's still a little time. We just launched a 9-month palliative care certificate program for massage therapists, and we'll be taking applications until July 15th for our next cohort, for the 2026 cohort. And it's for massage therapists who are curious about how to communicate in an advanced way with fellow humans and how to work in collaborative environments and how to learn from other disciplines, how to be better at our discipline. So we pull from nursing and social work and chaplaincy and create this curriculum that really, I think, is creating advanced communicators who are also excellent technical practitioners. We've got scar tissue classes coming up with Kath Ryan from Canada. And Healwell Homecoming is next October, so October 2026. But stay tuned because we have an amazing lineup coming together and we'll be doing research. And it's body and soul is our theme. So we'll have really hardcore, like ortho-minded, hands-on type stuff, and also a track for folks who really want to go deep into what does it mean to be a person and how do I show up to that experience for other people.
Best of both worlds.
Exactly. Oh, and we do have a new writing group that is we're working with some folks from MTF to teach massage therapists how to write, and that you don't have to do a full-blown study with statistics, etc., to write something meaningful that could be published in a journal. And so we've got editors and mentors and people who are helping massage therapists who thought they had nothing to say the things that they have to say. So come to the Healwell online community and let's write some stuff.
Beautiful. We need your voices.
That's right. We need your voices.
All right. Cal, I want to thank you so very much. This has been a personal treat to me to have this conversation with you. I can't thank you enough, not just for all that you're doing, but how you're showing up in the world, how you're participating, and just really everything. Thank you. Thank you for being.
It's ditto. You nailed it. It was a treat. I'm so glad to be with you, and I look forward to seeing what we can do with history.
I can't wait.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.